Part 1. The worst haul of the year. There are two things I've learned in 42 years on the road. First, if a dispatcher says it's just one easy run, it's a lie. Second, if you aren't parked on New Year's Eve with a cup of coffee and a warm sleeper heater, it means you seriously owe someone in the universe a favor. That year, I was 62. I already had the right to say to hell with it and retire. But retirement is for folks who have someone else to pay their bills. Me, I had bills, an old Peterbilt 379, and a temperament that didn't know how to quit. They slapped me with a reefer load, expensive seafood, lobsters, crabs, some premium fillets that smelled like money and trouble. This whole ocean in a box was supposed to be in Denver by 6 o'clock on January 1st. No delays, no excuses, the dispatcher said in the voice of a man who's never stood on black ice with 20 tons behind his back. I looked out the window. The blizzard was hitting so hard the world looked like a white TV screen with no signal. Ice, black, treacherous, the kind that makes even the seasoned guys pray under their breath. Listen, I said, it's not a night out there, it's a skating rink. The cargo is expensive, he replied. Drive slow. I already know how to drive slow. Not driving on ice at all. Now that's better. He hung up. I said to the empty cab, go to. Happy New Year to you too. The Peterbilt rumbled steady, like an old dog, still alive, still strong. The tire chains clattered like iron snakes. The snow was flying sideways, and the wind was knocking on the door like a debt collector. I was crawling down I-80 through Wyoming. And you know what? Wyoming at night in the winter isn't a state. It's a punishment. The coffee in the thermos had already turned into bitter water. The heater was working, but the cold still crept into your bones. I drove, counting miles like prayers. And then, through the white wall, I saw red lights. At first, I thought it was a reflection, then a sign. But no, hazards were flashing on the shoulder. And in the ditch, half buried like a dead whale, lay a white van. I braked, flipped my hazards, and pulled over carefully so I wouldn't end up joining them as a guest. Of course, I exhaled. Why the hell not? It's New Year's after all. I stepped out. The wind grabbed my face instantly. Snow tucked itself under my collar. The flashlight trembled in my hand. I walked up to the window, and my brain froze for a second like an old laptop. Inside sat 8 Santas. In suits. With beards. With hats. And all of them were in a state of, I'm gonna hug this tree and call it brother. One of them pressed his nose against the glass and said, ho ho ho, who are you, brother? I'm the guy who's supposed to be home right now, I grunted. And who are you people? We? He paused, thinking, we are the New Year's Goodness team. And then someone in the back yelled, hooray! Big Santa and the big truck came to save US. I felt a sudden urge to get back in the cab and pretend this never happened. But I was already standing there. And they had already seen me. And the New Year's Eve was just getting started. Part 2. The tow, the ice, and the first disaster in my cab. Listen to me carefully, I said. Are you all alive? Alive, they answered in unison, like a children's choir in a dive bar. I looked into the interior. One was sleeping sitting up, the second was holding a bottle like a holy relic, and the third was trying to fix his beard but kept hooking it on his ear and getting mad. How did you even end up here? The road, said the lead Santa, judging by the voice, the ringmaster of this circus. The road went whoosh, and we went boom. That is the dumbest accident explanation I've ever heard, I replied. But unfortunately, I believe you. I went to the truck, opened the side box, and pulled out a heavy tow strap and chains. I come back, and they've already climbed out of the van, standing there like 8 red bags in the snow. One was holding his hat in his hand, pretending to bow to the wind. Don't wander off, I barked. If anyone falls, I ain't picking you up. They listened about as well as cats do. I hooked the strap to the van's frame and the other end to the tow hook under the Peterbilt's bumper. I climbed into the cab and eased onto the gas real slow. Wheels spinning, chains clanking. The strap pulled tight. I felt the load in the trailer pulling me back like a mother-in-law pulling you back into the house. The van didn't budge. Come on, old girl, I whispered. I gave it a bit more juice. And then 2 things happened. My truck slid sideways on the ice so hard, my heart dropped into my boots. The van sank even deeper into the snow, as if saying, I live here now. And the Santas started to applaud. Whoa! Again! They cheered. You think this is a circus? I jumped out of the cab. This isn't a show. One of them held up a bottle. To craftsmanship. To your stupidity, I muttered. I realized pulling them out this way wasn't gonna work. I needed a winch, or another truck, or a miracle. And a miracle on New Year's Eve is just making it to your destination without dying. The temperature was dropping. The wind was picking up. They were already starting to shiver, though the booze was doing its job, convincing them they were in sunny Miami. All right, I said. Listen up. Here's the deal. Either you stay here and become Santa snow sculptures, or you ride with me to the nearest truck stop and we call a tow truck from there. Let's go. They rejoiced, like I just invited them to Disneyland. This is where I made the mistake of the century. I opened the cab door, one by one. And don't touch anything. They piled into the cab. One sat in the passenger seat, two on the lower bunk of the sleeper. Someone immediately found my bag of sunflower seeds and started cracking them like he was chopping wood. No, no, no. I snatched the bag away. That's my anti-stress. We're anti-stress too, one Santa said, and tried to hug me. And then the first legendary episode happened. One of them opened a beer. Where he was hiding it is still a mystery. Took a big gulp and choked. He started coughing, turning red, waving his arms like a helicopter. I thought, this is it. We're losing a Santa right here in the cab. But he coughed so violently that he puked all over my dashboard, right across the tachometer, the radio, the mirror heat button, the sacred button in weather like this. I froze. I turned my head slowly, like in a horror movie. You, I whispered. You just, sorry, he said, and tried to wipe it off with the sleeve of his suit. Don't wipe it with your sleeve, I screamed. This isn't a bar table. The Santas went silent. For 2 seconds, the cab was as quiet as a church. Then one of them said, very seriously, it's a sign. What sign? I snapped. That the new year is gonna be eventful. I wiped the dash with napkins I was saving for a rainy day. And I thought, well, the rainy day is here. And it's wearing a red suit. I pulled out of the turnout into the blizzard, hauling 8 drunk Santas into my fate. Part 3. Big Rig Santa and Sleeper Dancing. 10 minutes in, I realized. Inside a cab with 8 drunk Santas, the laws of physics are different. First off, they didn't sit. They flowed constantly from one spot to another. One was looking for a charger, the second was looking for his dignity, the third was looking for the exit, even though we were moving forward. Second, they decided I needed to get in the spirit too. Hey, Big Rig Santa, says the leader. I dubbed him Boss Santa. You got anything festive in here? I got a thermos of coffee and a will to live, I replied. Nah, for real. It's New Year's. My New Year's is when I'm not in a ditch. They laughed. Someone turned on my radio. First, country. Then Christmas songs. Then some rap where the word yo was repeated more often than my hazards flashed. One Santa started to sing. Another, dancing in the sleeper. And at one point, I heard a terrifying thud. That was him hitting his head on the cab ceiling because he decided to do the Rudolph dance. He sat down, rubbed his forehead, and said, "It's fine. I always dance like that." Then they started egging me on. "Give us a toast," one yells. "I'm driving." Toasts are best behind the wheel. They're the shortest. Don't die. I was genuinely afraid they'd either start a fight with each other or start helping me steer. Finally, we pull into a truck stop. Lights, neon, a full parking lot. I breathed a sigh of relief. "Listen," I said. "Truck stop. Get out quietly. Don't touch anything. I'm calling the tow truck." "Got it," they answered in chorus. And, of course, they did the exact opposite. The second I killed the engine, they flew out of the cab like fireworks. The first one ran to hug a driver in the neighboring Freightliner. The second started yelling, "Ho, ho, ho," into an exhaust stack. The third went into the store and started handing out candy to people that he didn't even have. He was just pulling some mint lozenges out of his pocket. I was running after them like a shepherd, after goats. "Stop, you guys! We are the holiday," they yelled. "You are a disaster." In the store, they saw a rack of Happy New Year hats. and decided they needed those too. You already have hats, I said. But these have glitter, Santa replied like a child. I called the tow company. Busy. Snow. Weather. We'll get there when we get there. I stayed grit-teethed. And then they saw the bar. Part 4. The bar. The service workers, and a genius idea that ended with the cops. A truck stop bar on New Year's Eve is like a magnet for stupidity. I said no. They heard yes. They walked in like an octopus in Santa suits. The people in the bar first thought it was a show. Someone started filming on their phone. Someone yelled, "Merry Christmas," even though Christmas was over. The bartender looked at me like I was their trainer. Are they with you? Unfortunately, yeah, I answered. The Santas ordered a small one. In their language, that meant a large one and 2 more. One of them winked at the bartender. Beautiful. We're here to make the night unforgettable. She didn't even blink. I get 10 of those unforgettables every day. Sit down. And then the genius idea started. Boss Santa leaned over and whispered to me, "Listen, Big Rig Santa, let's order some company." What kind of company? I already felt the trouble coming. You know, girls, for the party. You lost your mind. It's nothing bad. Just to talk. You can talk to me. You don't count. You're sober. I slammed my palm on the table. I'm sober because I'm the only one here who doesn't want to die on the highway. They roared with laughter. I tried to control the situation, but imagine. You're one, and there's 8 of them. And everyone is a comedic actor. They eventually found company. 2 girls walked into the bar with a look of, I've seen everything, but I haven't seen this yet. The Santa started flirting. Not gross, just stupid, the way only a drunk man in a Santa suit can be. I'm a gift. I'm a gift too. And me. I'm a bonus check. The girls were laughing, but I could see this was gonna end badly. Because one of the Santas decided to show a trick. He climbed onto a chair and started giving a toast so loud you'd think he was in a stadium. Attention! In the new year, we will be better people. And at that moment he slipped on his own cape, fell, and wiped out a tray of drinks from the neighboring table. Beer went flying like a wave. Glass on the floor. Someone screamed. One big driver, who was clearly already on edge, stood up and said, "Who's paying for this?" Boss Santa proudly pointed to himself. "Santa will pay." "With what?" the driver asked. "With love. I'm about to give you some love right now." And then it started. Not a mass knife fight, no, but enough. A shove, a response, another shove, and 8 Santas suddenly decided they were a SWAT team. I stood there thinking, if I step in, I'm getting arrested. If I don't step in, I'm still getting arrested because this happened next to my truck. Security called the police. And when the cops arrived, the scene was this. 2 Santas holding each other by the beards. One lying on the floor screaming, "I'm a gift." The bartender cussing. And me standing nearby, looking like the most miserable man in America. The officer looked at me. "Is this some kind of prank?" I answered honestly, "I wish it was." Part 5. The station and the most absurd testimony of my life. They put us in the car. Well, they put him in, me, just in case. I didn't even fight. I said, "Did you bring them here?" the cop asked. To my misfortune, yes. Then you're responsible. The station was warm and smelled like coffee. Now imagine, 8 Santas sitting in the hallway. 1 without a hat, 2 without beards, 1 with a beer stain on his belly, and next to them, me in my work jacket, with a face like life had betrayed me. The desk officer was filling out papers, looking up every now and then to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Names? Santa. Real names. John. Pause. Santa. The officer looked at him for a long time. Last name? Claus? I buried my face in my hand. Then one of the Santas suddenly remembered. "Hey, we didn't pay." "Pay who?" the officer asked. "The girls." "What girls?" "You know, the ones we were talking to." And a new round of explanations began. The funniest part was, they genuinely didn't remember who ordered what or who owed what. They mixed up the bar, the store, the girls, the broken glasses. Everything was blended in their heads like an error cocktail. The officer said, "Fine. Call someone sober to come pick you up." They all turned to me. Me. No. Them. "But you're Big Rig Santa." Me. "I'm not social services." And then my dispatcher called. "Where are you?" I looked at the Santa without a beard, trying to tape it back on with scotch tape. "At a document check." "What check?" "You have a load." "I have. A life." "Where are you parked?" I looked at the sign in the station, near the sheriff's office. There was a pause on the line. Then the dispatcher said, "Are you drunk?" No, I'm getting very close." Part 6. My reefer died, and the Santas decided to keep the party going. By the time we were finally released, me with a warning, them released to my custody with a mountain of fines, it was way past midnight. New Year's had arrived without me. I didn't even hear the bells. All I heard was the voice in my head pounding, "Why did you stop?" We got back to the lot. I ran to the truck, because the worst part about a reefer isn't the snow or the wind. The worst part is when the temperature drops to where it shouldn't be. I flip on the monitor, I look, and my heart sank. The reefer unit was showing a fault. The power had been fluctuating, the generator tripped, the system had shut down several times while I was at the station. The temperature had risen above the limit, and seafood, that's delicate stuff. It's either cold, or it becomes a weapon of mass stench. I opened the rear doors to check, and the smell hit me so hard I nearly fell over. "Oh no," I whispered. The Santas came up behind me. "Ooh, seafood," one said. "Don't touch it," I screamed. This is a disaster now." And they, of course, decided to help. One suggested, "Let's have a lobster party." I looked at him with such a gaze he stepped back. "Okay, maybe not a party, but can we at least get a whiff?" I closed the doors, locked them, hid the key. "That's it. I'm calling the company." "Let us cheer you up," they said. And then they did what every drunk crowd does when they see a sad man. They pulled out the booze. "No," I said. "I'm driving." "You ain't driving nowhere now," Boss Santa replied. "Now you're living." I resisted, but there were 8 of them and 1 of me, and they were as persuasive as vacuum salesmen. At some point I took a small sip, so they'd leave me alone. Then another to get warm. Then a third so I wouldn't kill them. And you know what's the sneakiest thing? When you're tired, angry, and frozen, alcohol works faster than common sense. I started laughing at their dumb jokes. I started telling stories about the time I hauled cows and one escaped at a gas station. I started feeling like this night wasn't just a night. It was some kind of stupid legend. And then, when I was already drifting, one Santa said, "Big Rig Santa, let's try to pull our van out one more time." I gave a drunken wave. "Pull it to the moon for all I care." And off they went. I stayed in the cab and realized that without me they'd make things even worse. Part 7. Operation Van Rescue, and a second meeting with the law. I barely caught up with them in the parking lot. They were already negotiating with another driver, a massive guy in a Kenworth who was looking at them like they were a TV show. "How many of you are there?" 8. "And you're all Santas?" "Yep. I ain't never seen nothing like this in my life." They talked him into helping. I tried to explain we needed to be sober, careful, no nonsense. But who was listening to me? We drove back to the spot where their van lay. The road had gotten even worse. Snow was drifting so bad our headlights looked like 2 spots in a bowl of milk. The Kenworth hooked the strap, started pulling, and then, just as the van was almost out, one Santa decided to give it a push from behind. On the ice. In his suit, he slipped, fell, and the van came out of the ditch, right onto his red backside. Everyone screamed. He screamed too. Luckily, the wheels didn't catch him. But the sight was such that if anyone had filmed it, YouTube would have broken from the views. And then, just my luck, a patrol car appeared, the same cop who had already seen us. He stopped, got out, and looked at the scene. 2 rigs, a van, 8 Santas, one lying in the snow screaming, and me standing to the side with a face of, "I can't do this anymore." The officer was silent for a long time. Then he said, "You again?" I answered, "It's not me, it's New Year's." Part 8. The end. The load spoiled, but a legend was born. By morning, I should have been in Denver. Instead, I was at a truck stop, with no load, with a reefer that smelled like the ocean had died, and with 8 Santas who were now halfway sober and very apologetic. The dispatcher was calling every 10 minutes. The company was screaming. Insurance was demanding reports. The buyer was demanding compensation. I sat on the edge of my bunk in the sleeper, looking at my dirty gloves, thinking this was the end of my career. And then Boss Santa walked up and said quietly, "Listen, we messed everything up." "Yeah," I replied. "You messed up the load, my cab, and my faith in humanity. We want to make it up to you somehow." "You can't make it up to me. You can't give me back the smell of my truck." He nodded. Then he pulled a small thing out of his pocket. A pin. On it was written, "Official Santa Crew," with a funny reindeer on it. "This is our mascot. We only give it to folks who really bail us out." I took the pin, looked at it, and for some reason, I started to laugh. "Well," I said, "I guess that makes me a Santa too." "You're Big Rig Santa," they said seriously. I laughed so hard, tears came to my eyes. And you know what? Yeah, I lost the load. Yeah, I had a mess of trouble waiting for me. Yeah, my dashboard smelled like New Year's beer for a long time. But that year, for the first time in ages, I felt like I was alive. Not just a driver, not just a guy between the miles, but a hero in a dumb but real story. Because on New Year's Eve, I wasn't hauling seafood. I was hauling 8 drunk Santas straight into a legend.